The Mafia boss mockingly asked a waitress for financial advice, but her very first words about optimizing illicit cash flow left him completely speechless. Your support means everything. Like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories like this. Let's start today's story. I'll have the financial advice on how to clean a few million with a side of black coffee, Erik Cooper said, not even bothering to look up from the contract he was reviewing. Samara Harris paused, order pad gripped tight in her hand. After a double shift at the vault, the upscale diner frequented by New York's most dangerous power players, this was exactly the kind of customer she'd been avoiding for 3 years. I'm sorry, sir. I don't believe we offer consulting services. Her voice remained professionally neutral, though her dark eyes stayed carefully fixed on her notepad. Erik finally looked up, and for a brief moment, he was caught off guard. He'd expected a nervous server, someone who'd pale at the implication, not this composed young woman meeting his test with controlled indifference. It was a joke, he said, signing the document with a fluid stroke. But since you're standing there, he leaned back, studying her with the same calculating assessment he used on rival syndicates. Erik Cooper, 38, ruthless head of the Cooper organization, worth billions in legitimate holdings and untold millions in shadow operations. Known for his cold efficiency and his habit of testing people's nerve when opportunity presented itself. Samara's co-workers had warned her about him. The booth in the back corner. The man who always paid cash. The one who made the owner visibly nervous. Where would you run $3 million in hot cash through the system without leaving a trace? Honestly, Samara met his gaze directly, making the split-second calculation. I'd leverage shell companies in jurisdictions with non-extradition treaties, Seychelles, Nevis, funneling capital through untraceable high-volume crypto accounts, converting to stablecoins, then back through a series of NFT wash sales that obscure the origin. You'd layer it with legitimate real estate LLCs, using inflated appraisals to justify the capital injection, and keep 15% liquid in offshore private banking for operational flexibility. The half-smile died on Erik's face. He set down his pen, the motion deliberate, controlled. That's surprisingly specific. His eyes narrowed, voice dropping to something dangerous. Did you study that somewhere, or are you wearing a wire? No, sir. Just common sense. She kept her expression blank, professional mask locked in place. Now, about your actual order. Wait. Erik leaned forward, the predatory focus of a man who'd just found something rare and valuable. Explain the NFT rationale. Why not just crypto to cash? Samara glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Erik. I have other tables. They can wait. I'm curious now. He gestured to the empty seat across from him, a command disguised as invitation. Sit. 5 minutes. I'll make it worth your while. I could lose my job. Erik looked past her to the owner hovering near the bar. Vincent. I'm borrowing your waitress for a business discussion. Any issues? Vincent's face went carefully neutral. Of course not, Mr. Cooper. Take all the time you need. Samara reluctantly slid into the booth, setting her order pad on the table like a barrier between them. This is inappropriate. Erik Cooper didn't do casual. Even seated alone in the corner booth of merchants and trade, the kind of downtown steakhouse where reservations required both money and connections, he commanded the room like he'd personally negotiated the terms of gravity. Samara had served him 3 times in the past month, and each time he'd looked through her like she was functional furniture, notable only when his whiskey needed refilling. Tonight was different. She approached with her server smile locked in place, notepad ready, but Erik's pale gray eyes tracked her with the focused attention of a man who decided she was suddenly worth studying. Samara, he said, her name deliberate in his mouth, and she knew immediately he'd pulled her employee file. Sit. Not a request. Never a request with men like him. She remained standing. I'm working, Mr. Cooper. Can I get you financial advice? His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I need to clean a few million. Offshore accounts? Real estate? Crypto? What's your professional recommendation? The question landed like a trap disguised as a joke. Several nearby diners glanced over, but Erik's expression suggested he found their discomfort entertaining. Samara's pulse spiked, but her face stayed neutral. I'd recommend speaking with a certified financial advisor. Can I get you another Macallan? That's disappointing. Erik leaned back, his custom suit moving with him like liquid shadow. I heard you were smarter than that. Princeton dropout with a finance degree you never finished. Shame to waste all that expensive education serving overpriced steak. Heat flared in Samara's chest. Anger and something darker. The reckless exhaustion of someone who'd been invisible too long. You want real advice? She said quietly, her voice dropping below the ambient noise. Or are you just testing whether I'm stupid enough to incriminate myself for your entertainment? His smile widened. Now we're having an honest conversation. Give me something specific, Samara. Prove you're as clever as your transcripts suggest. She should walk away. Should deflect again, smile politely, preserve the safe distance between his world and hers. Instead, she pulled out her notepad and began writing. Layer 3 LLCs across Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada, states with strong privacy protections. Run your funds through the first as consulting fees, the second as real estate investment, the third as art acquisition. Convert 20% to cryptocurrency through decentralized exchanges, small transactions under 10,000 to avoid FinCEN flags. Use the crypto to purchase NFTs at inflated prices from galleries you control. That's your cleaning cycle. The art purchases give you legitimate auction records. The real estate gives you tangible assets. The consulting fees are pure fiction, but impossible to disprove. She tore off the page and set it on the table between them. 12 to 18 months. You've got clean capital with a paper trail that survives audit. But you already knew that, Mr. Cooper. You just wanted to see if I did. The amusement drained from Erik's face like water from a cracked glass. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. Absolute, predatory focus. He picked up the paper, read it once, then looked at her with eyes that suddenly saw everything. You're wasted here, he said softly. Samara's hands were steady, but her heart was hammering. I'm surviving here. Not anymore. Erik stood, and even across the table, his presence felt like atmospheric pressure. You start Monday. Samara's hands trembled slightly as she refilled water glasses at table 6, the adrenaline from her own recklessness finally catching up to her. What had she been thinking? 3 years of careful anonymity, of keeping her head down and her mouth shut, undone in 30 seconds of ego and exhaustion. She could feel Erik's eyes tracking her across the dining room. When she returned to clear his appetizer plate, his hand closed around her wrist. Not hard, but absolute. Sit back down. Mr. Cooper, I tried to look you up while you were gone. His thumb rested against her pulse point, measuring. Samara Harris. 26. No college records. No LinkedIn. No digital footprint before 3 years ago beyond a driver's license and a lease agreement. He released her wrist, gesturing again to the seat. So either you're very good at staying invisible, or Samara Harris isn't your real name. She sat, because refusing would tell him everything. I value my privacy. People who value privacy don't give detailed money laundering strategies to strangers. Erik's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were calculating, cataloging every microexpression. Where did you study? Wharton? Columbia? Or somewhere less official? I read a lot. You don't learn that from books. He leaned back, still watching her like she was a complex equation he was solving in real time. You learn that from doing it, or from being very close to someone who does. So which is it? Are you running from something, or towards something? Samara met his gaze, keeping her breathing steady. I'm a waitress trying to pay rent in the most expensive city in America. That's all. No. Erik pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. You're something else entirely, and I'm going to find out what. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced efficiency, then reached into his inner pocket. He set 2 items on the table between them. A burner phone, still in packaging, and a stack of $100 bills wrapped in a money clip, easily $5,000. The phone is clean. My number's the only one programmed. He pushed both toward her. Call me when you're ready to stop pretending and start solving whatever problem has you working doubles at a diner with those kinds of skills. I don't need. Everyone needs something, Samara. He said her name like he was testing its authenticity. I'm offering you a chance to solve all of it. Whatever it is. He walked out before she could respond, leaving her staring at the phone and the cash like they were a live grenade. Erik slid into the back of his town car, already dialing. Marcus, I need a deep dive on someone. Samara Harris, waitress at the Vault. 26, but her background only goes back 3 years. I want to know who she was before that. A pause. Because she just gave me a financial architecture that would take my best analysts a week to design, and she did it in 90 seconds. Erik watched the diner recede through the tinted window. Find out who she really is. Samara sat on the edge of her studio apartment bed at 2 in the morning, staring at the burner phone and the stack of cash like they were evidence at a crime scene. Which, technically they were. She'd counted it 3 times. $5,000. Nearly 2 months' rent. A fraction of what she needed, but enough to be dangerous. Enough to be tempting. Erik Cooper wasn't offering charity. Men like him didn't operate on kindness. They operated on leverage and return on investment. He'd seen something he wanted, and now he was baiting the trap with exactly what she couldn't afford to refuse. Her phone buzzed. Her real phone. The message was from an unknown number, but she recognized the format immediately. The same type that had been arriving every month for 3 years. Each one a reminder of the cage she'd built around herself. Payment overdue. Interest compounded. New total, $847,000. Her breath caught. Your brother's campus address is 1847 Lexington Hall, room 314. Remind him to lock his door at night. Boston winters can be dangerous. Samara's vision tunneled. No, not Marcus. Her baby brother, 22 years old, pre-med at Boston University, who didn't know anything about why his sister had disappeared from the financial world, why she'd changed her name, why she sent him money every month from a waitressing job that shouldn't cover his textbooks. The second message arrived before she could process the first. Deadline moved to 30 days. Full payment, or we start collecting in other ways. You know we're patient people, Elena. But our patience has limits. Elena. Her real name. The one she'd buried along with her career, her reputation, her entire life. $847,000. In 30 days. She'd been scraping together payments for 3 years, bleeding herself dry to keep the interest from crushing her completely, to keep them from remembering she had family. And now they were done waiting. Samara looked at the $5,000 on her bed, then at the burner phone, then at the photo on her nightstand, her and Marcus at his high school graduation, both of them smiling, both of them still believing the world was fair and hard work mattered. She picked up the burner phone with shaking hands. The phone rang once before Erik's voice came through, alert despite the hour. I was wondering how long it would take. I need to meet. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Tomorrow. Your terms. What changed? Does it matter? A pause. She could almost hear him calculating, assembling the pieces. No, I suppose it doesn't. Background noise suggested he wasn't sleeping either. My office. Noon. The address will come through in 5 minutes. I haven't agreed to anything. You activated the phone, Samara. You already agreed. His voice carried a note of something that might have been satisfaction. Now we just negotiate the details. He hung up before she could respond. Samara sat in the darkness, holding a phone that connected her to a monster, staring at messages from the monsters she'd been running from. 30 days. She'd just chosen which devil to dance with. Cooper Financial Solutions occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Midtown, all polished marble and understated wealth. The kind of legitimate corporate front that could hide anything. Samara was escorted past the reception desk by a stone-faced security guard who didn't ask her name. The elevator required a keycard. Every camera tracked her movement. The conference room on the 32nd floor held 2 men. Erik, in another impeccable suit, stood by the windows overlooking the city. The other man, late 40s, military posture, eyes like a background check, sat at the head of the table with his arms crossed. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, my chief analyst. Erik gestured without looking away from the view. Marcus, our potential consultant. Marcus didn't stand. We don't need consultants. Especially not ones who appear out of nowhere with convenient expertise. Your concerns are noted. Erik finally turned, gesturing for Samara to sit. But I make the hiring decisions. Samara took the chair farthest from both of them, setting her bag down carefully. She'd worn the only professional clothes she still owned, 3-year-old pieces from her old life that still fit if she didn't breathe too deeply. Erik slid a thin folder across the table. If you work for me, you'll operate under a code name. Your real identity stays buried. You'll handle our most sensitive financial architecture, the kind that can't exist on official ledgers. He paused. You'll also never leave. Once you're in, you're in. Understand? Yes. Good. He opened a laptop, turning it to face her. Trial run. This is a map of our current operational cash flow across 17 entities. Someone's skimming. Small amounts, careful patterns. Find it. Marcus leaned forward. Our forensic team has been analyzing that data for 2 weeks. Then she has an advantage. Erik checked his watch. You have 30 minutes. Samara pulled the laptop closer, scanning the spreadsheet forest of shell companies, transaction chains, and capital movements. Her old instincts kicked in immediately, the pattern recognition she'd spent years developing and 3 years suppressing. 15 minutes later, she turned the laptop back around. It's not skimming. It's a digital footprint. She pointed to a series of highlighted cells. See these transaction timestamps? They're synchronized across 4 supposedly independent entities. Same financial institution routing numbers, but the accounts are flagged as different banks in your system. Erik's expression sharpened. Marcus stood, moving to look over his shoulder. Someone's mirroring your transactions in real time, Samara continued. They're not stealing money. They're mapping your entire network architecture. The amounts are small enough to clear your fraud detection, but precise enough to trace capital flow. Whoever embedded this has been watching you for at least 6 months. That's impossible. Marcus's voice was tight. Our systems are compromised. Samara met Erik's eyes. You don't have a theft problem. You have a surveillance problem. And based on the routing pattern, I'd say it's coming from inside one of your legitimate holdings. Someone with authorized access. Erik was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the screen, then on Samara. Marcus, find the breach point. Cross-reference every employee with system access against these transaction windows. He closed the laptop. Then sweep for external monitoring. Marcus left without another word. Hostility replaced by urgency. Erik extended his hand across the table. Welcome aboard. Erik poured 2 glasses of whiskey from the bar cart in the corner, sliding one across the conference table. Samara didn't touch it. You just saved me from a catastrophic intelligence breach. He remained standing, looking at her with the same assessment he'd used at the diner, but now with something approaching respect. If a rival organization has been mapping our network for 6 months, they're not gathering information for fun. They're planning something. A coordinated strike, Samara said quietly. Simultaneous hits across your most vulnerable points. They'd know exactly where to apply pressure. Exactly. Erik set down his glass. Which means you're not just skilled. You think like someone who's been on both sides of this kind of warfare. He pulled a document from his briefcase, placing it in front of her. $250,000 annually. Offshore account, untraceable. Full protection from my organization, which includes legal defense, security, and relocation if necessary. You'll work under the codename Sasha, reporting directly to me. Samara scanned the contract, her pulse hammering. $250,000. 3 years of debt, gone in 1 year. And the catch? You never leave. Erik's voice was matter of fact. You'll know too much. See too much. The only way out of my organization is in a body bag or witness protection, and I don't allow either. She pushed the contract back. I can't. You came here because you're desperate. I came here because I didn't have a choice. Samara stood, her chair scraping against marble. But I have enemies you don't know about. People who've been hunting me for 3 years. If I surface, if I start making the kind of money that leaves a trail, she stopped herself. I can't bring 2 hostile worlds down on the same target. You think I can't handle your enemies? Erik moved around the table, closing the distance between them. Tell me who they are. Give me names. You don't understand what you're. I understand you're running from people who have leverage over you. Probably financial crimes. Probably powerful people. Probably the reason you're working at a diner under a fake name. His voice dropped, controlled and dangerous. I'm offering you something better than hiding, Samara. I'm offering you the power to eliminate the threat permanently. She wanted to believe him. God. She wanted to believe someone could end this. My brother, she said finally. He's in Boston. Pre-med. He doesn't know anything about my past, about why I left, about any of this. He'll have protection by tonight. I need more than promises. Erik pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, then showed her the screen. A photo populated. Marcus, her brother, walking across a snowy campus, completely unaware of the dangers circling his life. I've had people watching him since last night, Erik said. The same people who sent you that threat. They've had surveillance on him for weeks. I can end that today. Samara stared at the photo, her last resistance crumbling. He stays safe. No matter what happens to me. You have my word. Erik set the contract in front of her again, along with a pen. Now let's solve all your problems. She signed. 14 days into her new life, and Samara had already restructured Erik's entire Eastern European investment portfolio, identified 2 additional security vulnerabilities, and designed a capital flow system so elegant it could survive federal scrutiny. She'd stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night, running on coffee and the manic energy of someone who'd found purpose again after years of enforced mediocrity. The war room on the 33rd floor was crowded. Erik's inner circle, 10 men who'd built empires in the shadows. Samara stood at the head of the table, laser pointer in hand, walking them through quarterly projections when she saw it. Stop. She clicked back 3 slides, her pulse spiking. These wire transfers. The ones routed through our Singapore subsidiary. She zoomed in on a cluster of transactions. They're matching the same temporal signature as the surveillance breach I identified. Someone's testing our new protocols. Erik leaned forward, his attention absolute. Explain. Microtransactions, all under reporting thresholds, but timed to coincide with our operational windows in 3 different time zones. It's sophisticated. Whoever's doing this knows our. Enough. Marcus stood, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Before we take strategic advice from a ghost, maybe someone should ask who she really is. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Erik's voice was dangerously quiet. Lieutenant, you want to share with the class? Samara Harris doesn't exist before 3 years ago. No college records, no employment history, nothing. Marcus threw a folder onto the table. Documents spilled across the polished surface. But her operational methodology? Her specific expertise in shell architecture and financial obscuration? That matches someone else. Someone who disappeared right after the Crestwood Group collapsed. Samara's blood turned to ice. Elena Marquez, Marcus continued, his eyes locked on hers. Chief financial architect for one of the largest corporate fraud schemes in recent history. 800 million in investor capital vanished. 50,000 people lost their retirement funds. Federal investigation still active. He picked up a newspaper clipping, the headline visible even from across the table. CFO Elena Marquez named in massive fraud scheme. Whereabouts unknown. She was never charged because they couldn't find her. Couldn't prove she orchestrated it or was a victim herself. But someone definitely blamed her. Marcus's smile was sharp. How much do they want, Elena? How much are you running from? The room was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Erik's gaze hadn't left Samara's face. Is it true? She could lie. Should lie. But they'd already seen too much. Yes, she said quietly. My name is Elena Marquez. And everything they said I did? I actually did worse. Everyone out. Erik's voice was controlled, but the command was absolute. Marcus opened his mouth to protest. Sir, if she's compromised. I said out. Erik didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The room emptied in 30 seconds. Marcus lingering in the doorway before finally pulling it shut. The silence that followed felt like a held breath before an explosion. Erik circled the table slowly, his eyes never leaving Samara's face. So, are you a federal plant? A rival organization's long game? Or just a very talented criminal who thought she could hide in my operation? I'm leaving. Samara reached for her bag. No, you're not. Erik moved between her and the door, not touching her, but creating a wall of presence. You signed a contract. More importantly, you involved me in whatever war you're fighting. I've got men watching your brother in Boston. I've restructured my entire security protocol based on your analysis. You don't get to drop a bomb and walk out. You want the truth? Her voice cracked, 3 years of pressure fracturing through. Fine. I was brilliant. I was 23 and designing financial instruments that made Wall Street look like a lemonade stand. Crestwood Group recruited me, called me a prodigy, gave me everything I'd ever wanted. And when it all came down, when $800 million disappeared and 50,000 lives were destroyed, she stopped, her hands shaking. They made sure every piece of evidence pointed to me. They? Who's they? Does it matter? I was loyal. I trusted the wrong people. And when I realized what they'd actually been using my work for, when I tried to document the real architects, her laugh was bitter. Turns out it's hard to expose powerful men when they've spent 2 years making you the perfect scapegoat. Erik pulled out his phone, swiped to a document, and held it up. Elena Christina Wright. Princeton graduate, youngest CFO in Crestwood's history, died in a car accident 6 months after the collapse. Single vehicle collision, closed casket funeral, dental records confirmed identity. Samara stared at the obituary, her breath stopping. But I know Elena Christina Wright is very much alive, Erik continued quietly. Because Samara Harris, the real Samara Harris, was the 24-year-old junior analyst who worked under you. The one who fed you to the wolves and took your identity after they faked your death. How did you? The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. Erik set the phone down. Your mentor, David Crestwood, and his daughter Samara, your protege, they orchestrated the entire fraud using your architecture. When federal investigators got close, they needed someone to blame. So they gave you 2 choices. Take the fall publicly and go to prison, or disappear completely while they pinned it on a corpse. I chose to run, she whispered. No. Erik's voice was sharp. You chose to survive. There's a difference. You knew. Samara's voice was barely above a whisper. You knew before I walked into that diner. Before the contract. Before any of this. I suspected after our first conversation. I confirmed it 3 days before you signed. Erik moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, his reflection watching her in the glass. Elena Christina Wright. Youngest financial architect to ever design a sovereign wealth fund restructuring. You didn't just stumble into this knowledge, Samara. You were exceptional. Then why hire me? Why bring someone this compromised into your operation? Because exceptional people don't end up serving coffee unless something catastrophic happened. And catastrophic usually means leverage. He turned to face her. I needed to know if you were running towards something or being hunted. Now I know it's both. The weight of 3 years pressed against her chest. David Crestwood wasn't just my mentor. He was running a multi-billion-dollar operation, laundering cartel money, arms deals, human trafficking proceeds, all disguised as legitimate hedge fund activity. I was designing the instruments, but I thought we were serving institutional clients. Pension funds, university endowments. Her voice hardened. When I found the real ledgers, when I understood what I'd actually built, I documented everything. Every transaction, every shell company, every political connection. Smart. Stupid. She laughed bitterly. Because David's family business wasn't metaphorical. The Crestwood family has Mafia ties going back 3 generations. When I confronted him with evidence, he had my parents picked up within an hour. My brother was 17. They put guns to their heads and gave me a choice. Take the fall publicly, disappear quietly, or watch them execute my family on live stream. Erik's expression darkened. So you built your own death. Samara Harris, the real one, was David's daughter and my assistant. She'd been grooming me for months, learning everything I knew. They staged my car accident, used a body from one of their trafficking operations, and Samara stepped into my life while I stepped into hers. Her hands clenched. I've been paying them $800,000. Hush money, they call it. Insurance that I stay buried, and they keep my family breathing. The debt that brought you to me. They moved up the timeline. 30 days, or they start with my brother. She met his eyes. I chose your devil because at least you were honest about what you are. Erik was silent for a long moment, his mind clearly calculating, assembling pieces into strategy. The network you documented. Do you still have it? Memorized. Every account, every connection, every political officer on their payroll. Then you didn't just expose a criminal operation. His smile was predatory. You mapped the entire East Coast trafficking infrastructure. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. Marcus. Conference room. Bring the tactical team. What are you doing? Eliminating your problem. Erik's voice carried the cold certainty of someone who'd waged wars and won. David Crestwood and his organization are about to learn what happens when they threaten someone under my protection. 3 weeks later, David Crestwood's empire collapsed in a single coordinated strike that would be studied in federal law enforcement courses for years. Anonymous tips delivered to 6 different agencies simultaneously, each containing irrefutable evidence of trafficking operations, money laundering networks, and political corruption. The documents were so meticulously organized that prosecutors called it gift-wrapped justice. Erik had dismantled it with surgical precision, not just exposing the criminal network, but ensuring every asset was seized, every connection severed, every threat neutralized. The real Samara Harris, David's daughter, was arrested trying to board a flight to Dubai. David himself was found dead in his penthouse before the FBI breached the door, an apparent suicide that no one questioned too closely. The $800,000 debt evaporated like it had never existed. Samara stood in Erik's office, watching news coverage of the arrest scroll across multiple screens. Her brother was safe. Her parents were safe. For the first time in 3 years, she could breathe without calculating the cost. "You could disappear now," Erik said from behind his desk, his voice carefully neutral. "I'd give you a new identity, clean papers, enough money to start over anywhere in the world. You've earned it." She turned to face him, this dangerous man who'd become her unlikely salvation. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is irrelevant. You're free, Elena. Actually free. The question is what you do with it." She'd spent the last 3 weeks working alongside him, restructuring his entire financial infrastructure, designing systems so sophisticated they bordered on art. She'd remembered what it felt like to be brilliant, to be valued for her mind rather than her ability to stay invisible, to build something powerful instead of just surviving. "My name is Samara now," she said quietly. "Elena died in that car accident." She was naive and trusting and believed the world rewarded talent with loyalty. She moved to the desk, placing her hands on the polished surface between them. "I don't want to go back to that person." "Then who do you want to be?" "Your financial consigliera." She met his eyes steadily. "Your second. The person who ensures your empire never falls to the kind of betrayal that destroyed mine." Erik stood, circling the desk until he was close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the absolute certainty he carried like a weapon. "That's not freedom, Samara. That's choosing a different cage." "No." Her smile was sharp, dangerous, nothing like the waitress who'd served him coffee 4 weeks ago. "That's choosing power. Control. A life built on my terms, with someone who understands that loyalty is currency and trust is earned through fire." He studied her for a long moment, then extended his hand. Not a handshake, an alliance. "Welcome home, consigliera." She took his hand, and felt the weight of her past finally release its grip. This was her future now, shadows and strategy, fierce loyalty and calculated chaos. She'd never felt more alive. That's today's story. Subscribe so you don't miss the next impossible decision, the next unforgettable character, the next story that makes you question what you do when invisibility stops being safety. Comment below with your answer. I read every single one. See you soon.